秘书长，哎呀，来，我们刚赶到。这个重要就交给你。好嘞。拿牌是吧？
不能拿，你发的。这边找谁
啊？下人来了，哎呀，谢谢你啊，高兴了啊，哈哈。
The first name is seats over there on the table from the right side.
对，哈。哎呀，朱会长，哎呀，来，我拍照，哈哈，哈哈。
哎，怎么好？老大叫了，好了，
好，老乡。
So everybody scan the ticket. 不然不用。
这个老乡，那个，对。
And I come from California's 28th district, and I am chair of the Congressional Asian. The testimony of a white person could save them. This law deprived the Chinese community in America of their civil rights for 60 long years. Had never even heard of this law. The United States Senate and the House of Representatives unanimously passed my bill officially expressing regret for the Chinese Exclusion Act. This year, I am proud to announce that I will soon introduce the official congressional resolution to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act. As the first Chinese American woman ever elected to Congress, I will always use my seat at the table to ensure that our history is remembered so that nothing like this will happen to our communities ever again. Likewise, we are also gathered here to remember another turning point for our communities. In 1895, 24-year-old Wong Kim Ark returned home to San Francisco after legal status as a United States citizen born on American soil. But the customs officer rejected
Declaration of Independence. Dr. Conan, one correction for the record. I want all of you to know, especially in this room for this audience, that President Biden has 2 members in his cabinet of Chinese ethnic and origin, and we'll also have Julie Su right now acting as our labor secretary. And I want to let you know, I could not be more proud to be serving alongside her. She is the real deal. She is the best of us, and I hope that you will take time to celebrate her as well. It is a great honor to be here with all of you, to see so many friends today. It's an occasion to recall some history. Think back, it was May 6, 1882. In New York City, in Madison Square, you could see the giant arm of the unfinished Statue of Liberty holding a torch. And on that same day, President Chester A. Arthur signed into law something unlike any other law since the founding of this republic, one that explicitly singled out the specific race and nationality, Chinese, as undesirable here in America. 3 years later, in 1885, as a fundraising campaign was underway to pay for the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, Sam Sung Bo, a Chinese immigrant and recent college graduate, wrote an open letter to the Sun newspaper, in which he said, "The word liberty makes me feel the fact that this country is the land of liberty for all men of all nations, except the Chinese." That statue represents liberty holding a torch which lights the passage. But are the Chinese allowed to do? With one stroke of a pen, this country became a land of liberty, equality, and justice, not for all, but only for some. And the founding principles of this nation, enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, that all are created equal and endowed with inalienable rights, became less self-evident. But our strength has never been just about economic or military might. It is our ability to recognize when our reality falls short of our ideals, and our devotion to achieving a more perfect world. The Chinese Exclusion Act was in effect for over 60 years, and in many ways, that law was the beginning of more discriminatory and hateful policies directed at immigrants and people of color across the United States. Today, we celebrate the 80th anniversary of its repeal, and we honor those who fought so hard to repeal that law. But we also know that progress is not linear. Our Declaration of Independence and those ideals, they aren't just an idea. And when those ideals are lived out through our people, it then becomes our identity. The story of our country is precisely that. People from all backgrounds, all colors, all creeds, coming together out those ideals of equality, freedom, and justice. In 1858, President Lincoln delivered a speech in Chicago in which he noted that over time, more and more Americans may not have any blood relation to those men who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Yet, each of us are and will continue to be linked to those immortal words and ideas by an electric cord through our hearts, through our patriotism, through our we are forever tied to those ideals because we walk in the shoes of so many that have come before us. Those that bled and shed tears to push us forward, closer toward fulfilling the promise of America for all of our people. And that is what so many of our heroes and heroines fought for. That is what Anna May Wong fought for. That is what Dick Wo fought for, and Wong Kim Ark, and March Fong Yu, and so many more. Their fight for a more just and inclusive America opened new doors for more people to come here from Asia. And I would not be here in my job serving the American people without them. I was born in Connecticut in 1973, the very first American I think. Because of President Kennedy's immigration reforms in the 1960s, my parents were able to come to the United States to pursue graduate studies in the sciences, become Americans, and devote their careers to public service. So I am both a second-generation American and a second-generation public servant. In fact, I remember earlier in my career as a lawyer at the agency I now head, the U.S. Trade Representative's Office, one of the first cases I argued at the World Trade Organization. I was there with my USTR co-counsel, whose parents had come to the United States from India. As we stated that we were presenting the case on behalf of the United States of America, we beamed with pride, knowing that here we were, two daughters of immigrants from Asia, fighting for we the people. That is the America I know and love. That no matter what you look like, you are welcomed as a treasured character, as a fighter in our American story. This story lives on today. It is being written by everyday Americans, not willing to accept the status quo as a foregone conclusion, not willing to grow cynical in the face of oppression and ignorance, willing to stand up to the beating and cursing, living out their lives, providing for their loved ones, serving their communities, and loving their neighbors. And it's not just Chinese Americans or Asian Americans, but all Americans who have a stake in our nation's story. But this experiment that we call America is worth perfecting. This home is worth building, and this bond worth defending. Men and women, like all of you here today, not willing to settle for what was or could have been, but to pick up that pen and write a new chapter in our story. I want to recognize the important group of Chinese American and Asian American organizations that are here this morning. I also want to thank Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy for sponsoring this event here in the Capitol. And of course, Congresswoman Judy Chu, our fearless leader of the CAPAC, the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. Thank you for all that you are doing. Our administration is so proud to be your partner in this work. Since day one, President Biden and our entire team has been fighting for you and with you. One of the first actions President Biden took after taking office was to sign an executive order on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. And this past January, our administration issued the first national strategy to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for the Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities. President Biden also revamped the White House initiative and the President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans and data-oriented government. It is truly an honor for me to serve as a co-chair of both, and we have been working hard on your behalf to address systemic racism in our policies and our programs, to improve language access and to disaggregate data, to empower small business owners and workers. Yes, we know that there is much more work to do. Our communities are still experiencing bigotry and violence. Columbia University and the Committee of 100 recently conducted a survey of Chinese Americans and found that nearly 75% of respondents experienced racial discrimination or racism-related violence just in the last 12 months, and more than half worry about their safety. According to the organization Stop AAPI, between March 2020 and March 2022, there were over 11,000 incidents of anti-Asian hate in America. Our communities continue to fear for our family members, our elders, and our children. We hear your concerns loud and clear. This is not okay. Tensions between the United States and the People's Republic of China obviously can make things worse. Our bilateral relationship between countries is complex and profoundly consequential, and there are real challenges. But we need to be disciplined, defining what the challenge is, disciplined in making clear what the challenge is not. We need to be crystal clear that our concerns are with the PRC government's policies and practices, not with the Chinese people or those of Chinese descent. We can fiercely defend our economic interests and our national security, and fiercely embrace our diversity at the same time. In fact, we must do both. This is in fact an enormous priority for me and my staff at USDA. We're crafting trade policies that are more just and inclusive. We are meeting AA and NHPI workers, small businesses, their communities, where they are, to hear directly from them and to incorporate their concerns into our work, just as we are doing with workers, small business owners, family farmers, all across America. We are making sure our policies reflect the needs and desires of all Americans across our planet, especially those that have been marginalized, not just the ones that can afford Washington lobbyists. We will face, undoubtedly, old headwinds and new headwinds, but I am deeply grateful because of all of you, because of all of us, because I know we will respond with the same resolve, the same determination, the same courage, so that in the midst of all of our joy will be unhindered, our unity unbroken, and our hope unhindered. So that as future generations look back 80 years from now, as they glance up at the torch in the hands of the Statue of Liberty, or an AI rendering of that torch, they too will feel the connection through the electric cord that President Lincoln was talking about, that inseparable bond, and say, yes, this story.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early just so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the prairie has flight
most important part. That's the photo. Yes, good to see you.
Next up, I'd like to invite Stephanie Sun, Steve Holland, IT Asphalt, to introduce the Pro S Club International Foundation. So, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. First, I want to say thank you to all the organizers and volunteers for their tireless effort and work day and night to make this important event happen. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you so much to every one of you and all the distinguished leaders for your support, traveling from across the country to be here together with us for this very important, historic moment. Thank you so much. My name is Stephanie. Thank you. My name is Stephanie Sun, and it is my true honor to stand before you to mark a major milestone in American history, the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act. The act was the first ever notable law discriminating against an ethnic group and restricting immigration into the U.S., making Chinese people in America the first undocumented immigrants and banning many Asians from immigrating and voting. Today's occasion not only commemorates legislative change, but also pays homage to the tireless effort to a remarkable woman who led in repealing the Chinese Exclusion Act, Ms. Pro Espa, known by Chinese as Sai Zhenju. Next slide, please. Here we go. As a Chinese American and an immigrant, I'm very honored to serve as a board member of Pro-Lesba International PSBI, Chinese name Sai Zhenju Guoji, which was founded by Pro-Lesba, a person who I deeply admire and forever appreciate. Pro-Lesba is the first American woman to be awarded both the Nobel Prize for Literature and the Pulitzer Prize. Her novel, The Good Earth, Chinese name Da Li, drew on her first-hand observation of Chinese village life and opened a window to China for the Western world, challenging Western stereotypes and fostering cultural understanding between the West and East. When people talk about Pro-Lesba, Sai Zhenju, they emphasize that she was a world-renowned writer and novelist, but we're here today to recognize her for her historic contributions leading the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act and her constant advocacy for humanitarian causes. I'm very proud to bring Pro-Lesba International PIBS, Sai Zhenju Guoji, to this very special stage. Together with me, we have the PSB Board Chair, Martin Axel, the President and CEO, Christy Holland, and Henry family, Tom, Beth, and Ann. It is a photo of Pro-Lesba Sai Zhenju with the director of the United China Relief, with a poster in their hands used in the drive that raised $5 million for Chinese relief in 1938 during the war between China and Japan. Next slide, please. To the right is Police Bachao for her Chinese name, Sai Zhenju. The Chinese character Sai pronounces similarly to her maiden name, Sai the Stripper, and the following two Chinese characters, Zhenju, are the translation of her first name. The map on the left marks the areas she lived in China: Xinjiang, Zhenjiang, Suzhou, Hangzhou, Yantai, Huai'an, Shanghai. Next slide, please. To the left, you see Pro with her daughter, Janice, in China in 1932. To the right is her family with Pro's nanny, Wang. Pro learned Chinese from her nanny and called her nanny in Chinese, Wang Ama. Now I would like to invite Christy Holland, the President and CEO of PSBI, to share with us Police's story.
Roebuck grew up in China from 1892 to 1934. Her life experience in China created within her a deep admiration for the Chinese people, language, and culture that continued through her lifetime. Although she lived the second half of her life in the United States, she continued to promote cross-cultural understanding and education about the East throughout her lifetime. Ms. Buck demonstrated her great love for the Chinese people through consistent advocacy. In 1937, when war broke out between Japan and China, Roebuck and her husband and publisher, Richard Walsh, worked together to raise awareness in the U.S. about what was happening in Asia. They worked to raise awareness in the United States and formed the Chinese Emergency Relief Committee to send Chinese citizens critical supplies. In 1941, she became the chairwoman of the United China Relief to raise financial support for China. At a fundraising event that year, Chinese Ambassador Wu Xie presented Buck with the Order of Jade, an award given in recognition of her work for this country, for his country. The couple also bought Asia magazine, providing writers a place to discuss the current political events and culture in Asia. That same year, Buck and Walsh founded the East-West Association to raise awareness about the East in American society and promote important contributions resulting from a connection between the East and West. Next slide, please.
Lin Yutang is a well-known Chinese novelist, philosopher, and linguist. The photo that you see now is released by Sai Zhenju with children of Lin Yutang during a radio broadcast. Lin Yutang is a friend of Pearl and Richard, who they worked on several projects together. Lin Yutang wrote articles for the East and West Association magazine regularly. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. And the association and its magazine, I'm sorry, can you go back? And the association and the magazine help promote the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act in their media and public relations work. Next slide, please.
Ms. Buck was steadfast in her pursuit to overturn Chinese exclusion laws barring Chinese immigrants from entering the United States. Together, she and Richard Walsh formed the Citizens Committee to repeal Chinese exclusion. The committee began as a relatively small group of notable public figures to call for a bill to repeal the Chinese Exclusion Act. Chaired by Richard J. Walsh, Ms. Buck was a committee member and most notably the avid spokeswoman for the committee. She repeatedly used her voice and publications to end targeted attempts to block immigration. The committee sent the pamphlet you see behind me, Our Chinese Wall, to explain why the act needed to be repealed. Donations were sent by supporters, as well as additional names of potential sympathizers, crowdfunding before an internet. In this way, support for the repeal grew steadily. The committee was one of at least 8 such groups and was highly influential in organizing support for the repeal of federal law. The powerful committee attracted larger forces to lobby Congress for repeal. Next slide, please. Pictured behind me is a telegram from Pearl S. Buck appealing to the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Immigration and Naturalization to put forward the bill to repeal the exclusion action. Here, Pearl states that Chinese wives should be able to join their American husbands. Also pictured is Pearl Buck, emerging in 1943 following her testimony before the House Committee on Immigration and Naturalization. She emerges receiving warm thanks from a group of young Chinese women. Next slide, please. And here is the announcement of victory to committee members that the bill was passed. In 1949, with the Exclusion Act repealed, Pearl S. Buck founded Welcome House, an international adoption agency. In 1964, she expanded the reach of her humanitarianism to provide education, healthcare, and nutrition for Asian children so that they might thrive in their own communities and countries. These countries included China, South Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Thailand. Next slide, please.
As the son of a mixed-race couple and first-generation immigrants to this country from India and Sweden, my connection to the legacy of Pearl Buck and all that she stood for in her fight for equality among Asian Americans has great meaning. The repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act had a profound impact with not just Chinese immigrants. As narrated by the U.S. Department of State, the repeal of the Chinese exclusion paved the way for measures in 1946 to admit Filipino and Asian Indian immigrants. The exclusion of both of these groups had long damaged U.S. relations with the Philippines and India. Pearl paved the way for so many, including my father's journey to this country from India, enabling him to capture the American dream by furthering his education, starting a family, a business, and supplanting his own legacy and contributions to this country. Pearl Buck was a visionary, a woman before her time, who possessed the bravery and courage to speak out against social, economic, and political injustice. Upon her return from China in her essay on discovering America, Pearl Buck stated, "I find we are all immigrants. When we cease to allow people to come in from all over the world, we shall ourselves begin to die, as other nations are dying. New people coming to a new country bring new impetus in themselves. They are fresh and fusion, uncomfortable perhaps, and even painful, but they are life. We cannot do without them." She concluded, "Our diversity remains our strength, our nature, and our safety." Next slide, please. The immigrant story is one that is based on resiliency, perseverance, and hope. Hope in search for a bright and prosperous future in a land of opportunity. Pearl Buck was a pioneer that opened doors for Chinese and Asian immigrants, who not only built their roots in this country, but helped to build the fabric and foundation for industry and innovation through hard work and determination. While the contributions of Chinese Americans in the mid-19th century to the World War II era are undeniable, today we see the breadth and richness of Chinese American contributions across this country. Following is just a snapshot of the impact that the Chinese American community has had on our nation, not inclusive of the extraordinary influence of the myriad cultural and artistic expressions. According to the Economic Intelligence Unit, 1 out of every 5 Chinese American men served in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II. 1 in 25 aerospace engineers today in the U.S. are Chinese American. Today, 1/10 of working Chinese Americans are employed in healthcare and health supporting occupations. In 2019, Chinese Chinese American employment in public administration grew by 68%, outpacing the growth of the Chinese American population and that of public administration workforce as a whole. Since the repeal of the Exclusion Act, the contribution of Chinese Americans and their impact has resoundingly affirmed robust statement that the life and breath of this nation rests on the backs and hearts of those who have faced and overcome great things. While we still have a long way to go to continue the legacy of Crow and others who have fought for equality and an end to prejudice and discrimination, days such as today should bring renewed impetus for all of us, collectively further the fight for justice and equality for all, coming from a place of understanding, recognition, and acknowledgement of the contributions of those who have preceded us. I would like to welcome the Henry family to the stage, Beth and Ann.
Last began to try to ensure that children of Asian and Asian American ethnicity could be adopted by their other family. She was told that these children were unadoptable due to circumstances that led her. She was undeterred. Began by engaging the Yoder family, a family of 4 in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, to adopt a child who was considered unwanted. Over the next decade, they would adopt a total of 10 children of Asian American descent, and due to the success of this endeavor, Earl S. Buck founded the Welcome House Adoption Program. As a result of this program, in the next 60 years, more than 7,000 children will be adopted, including myself. It's changed the lives of more than 7,000 children and their adopted families, including my parents who are here today on one country.
In the mid-1990s, we were introduced to Welcome House through an information session in Millersville, Pennsylvania. My wife and I were unable to have a natural birth children, so we engaged Welcome House, who then provided the guidance mechanisms we needed to find a child in their home. We began the process in 1994, but delayed it by changes in the adoption policies with China, and actually were disqualified at one point. But lo and behold, through the grace of God, and maybe throw us up moving down in the process, we received a referral for a beautiful little girl. The picture is behind us. That was the first picture we received. Our first Welcome House provided the necessary guidance, clearances, and international communications necessary for a smooth process. We traveled with 4 other parents, also pictured behind us, who also received a beautiful child in the process. Our travel group, even after over 25 years away from that experience, still get together with our families for shared events. In the girls' early years, Welcome House would sponsor many activities at their campus location, where the Pearl West Buck House is located, and adoptive families and prospective adoptive families congregate and share their experiences. The girls, or should I say young women, are all doing well in special ways. One is a teacher, data coordinator for a private school in the Philadelphia area. Another is a physical therapist, serving special needs students in the Lancaster area. One just received her Master's of Social Work and is a drug and alcohol therapist. And the 4th is working towards her Master's in Food Sciences and Business Administration at Rutgers University. Is scheduled to graduate in December 2024. I'd like to turn it back over to Steve.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
This year marks the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, but also the 80th anniversary of the passion. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, but also the 50th anniversary of the passing of Miss Prolispa. I hope now she's looking down upon us and she can hear us. It's like this. As we stand on the shores of her legacy, as we gather here 80 years later, at the place around the roots where she testified and fought battles to repeal the Chinese Exclusion Act, I want to take this opportunity on this stage to publicly say some words to Miss Prolispa in English and Chinese, both her mother tongue. Dear Miss Pro-Lesba, we Chinese Americans, thank you. 亲爱的赛君珠女士，我们美国华人感谢您。We immigrants, thank you. 我们移民感谢您。We Americans, thank you. 我们美国人感谢您。We the people, thank you. 我们大家感谢您，赛君女士。
Say on behalf of the presentation of the board for you guys. Thank you for sharing your story.
I want to introduce our U.S. Senator from Illinois, Amy Douglas, to speak to us as a keynote speaker today. Here I want to highlight a few of our Senator Tammy's extraordinary accomplishments. Senator Amy Douglas is a Purple Heart recipient for her heroic acts in the Iraq War. She also served the President Obama's administration as an Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Veterans Affairs. Tammy was one of the very first handful Army women to fly combat mission during the Operation Iraqi Freedom. Tammy served in the Reserve Forces for 23 years before retiring at the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in 2014. Tammy was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2016 after representing Illinois' 8th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives for 2 terms. Senator Duckworth is a strong advocate and defender of our Asian Americans, equal white and equal white. We all remember at the very critical moment when President Biden just got into the White House and was assembling his cabinet, Hemi went to the White House, requested the president to remember how Asian Americans supported his campaign. Hemi requested, actually demanded the president to appoint at least 1 or 2 Asian Americans to be in his cabinet. And she succeeded for all of us. Please let us all warmly welcome our keynote speaker, Senator Tammy Duckworth.
So we're going to do a fireside chat because I don't like just talking at people. And I find that the question and answer often reveals more and is more interesting.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephen, for that wonderful introduction.
Tammy, it's wonderful to see you here. And you are our pride and joy. And as a U.S. Senator with your Asian heritage, I know you have Chinese and Thai heritage, and Tammy's grandparents came from Canton, China. And how does this special moment, the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, into you?
Well, it's so incredibly important because if this country is going to be a nation of equal, where everybody has an opportunity to strive for that American dream, then we all must be able to be equal under the law. And the Chinese Exclusion Act specifically excluded Chinese Americans. And then later on, with the internment of the Japanese Americans, again, another group of Asians were excluded. And this is something that is a shameful part of American history. So I celebrate the 80th anniversary, but I also want to remind people of this part of American history. It's important to not forget so that we never, ever do that again. Because let me tell you, when countries move along and we confront world global events, it is very easy to descend back into distrust. It is easy to descend back into isolated groups of people because they look different, they speak different, they eat different, they pray different. And that's not what this country is about. And so it is really important to continue to acknowledge the existence of the Chinese Exclusion Act, but also to celebrate the repeal of that act, and to celebrate the achievements of Asian Americans all across this country, and how we could not be the nation we are today without the labor, without the contributions of Asian American and Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiians across this country. And so celebrations like today are really near and dear to my heart because I feel that this makes America stronger for the future.
To follow what you just said, we human beings tend to have certain memories. We often forget history, lessons. And what do you think specifically the Asian Americans have to do to make sure that the history of Chinese Exclusion Act, the Japanese internment camp, such best parts in our history will never repeat itself again?
Well, two things. One, we need to become more actively involved in how this country is run. I think there is a tradition, especially among Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities, to keep your head down and work hard and do better for the next generation. But we have to be loud voices also, and this is where we need to count on and learn from the generations of activists before us, but also grow the next generation of activists. I am the first Asian American elected to the United States Senate, not from Hawaii. That's wrong. That's bad. We are such a big part of the American population. At least 4% of the senators, the 100 senators, at least 4% should be. There should be 4 Asian Americans outside of Hawaii elected to the Senate, and yet there's 1 in 2016. That shows that we are not being represented the way we should be in the halls of power. And I'll give you an example about not allowing history to forget the contributions of Chinese Americans, for example. In Illinois, we became the first state in the country to require the teaching of Asian American history in all of our schools. And we passed that as a law after we elected Asian Americans to our state legislature. We should be doing that all across the country so that the next generation of kids learn their history.
Indeed. We Chinese Americans or Asian Americans often would become doctors, engineers, businessmen, even lawyers. But very few of us would become politicians. And what would you advise the young Asian American kids who has the aspiration to get into politics, yet they do not see a good model in their family that would lead them to American politics? They would be interested but hesitant. What advice would you give to them? Because you are a shining example of how Asian Americans could be very good politicians. We have so much to contribute to this country. What can we do to get involved into politics, to learn from it, to be a shining star in American politics?
In the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community, and we have to make sure that that is a valid, respected pathway. What I say to the young people is get involved, take that passion and get involved. And get involved, your first thing that you run for does not have to be United States Congress, United States Senate. There are really important roles in all of our communities, like trustee on your school board. Who do you think decides what books are put into the library of your local library that your kids will have to study? And if there's a lack of books on Asian history, why is that? Well, you need to have people on the board of trustees of the local library. You need to have PTA members. You need students to be part of their student senate. All of that in those ranks, and we need people like that who are active, who are civically minded, civically engaged, but also professions in their own fields to also come over and participate and help lead this nation, whether it's as an elected official or as an appointee.
Thank you. I bet that your remark will encourage a lot Asian kids to step forward to get into politics in the future.
And their parents to let them.
Yes, indeed. We got to let our kids know. And Senator, also, I have to say that you are really the leader of our Asian American leaders. And what can we do to support you, to help you, or to help good politicians like you, so that you can move forward to even do more in the governing and politics of this country? What can we do for you?
I think engaging with your local leaders. Unfortunately, we're in a time now with, on the national security front, there is a competition between the United States in terms of the military, in terms of national security, and the PRC. And that is bleeding over into other areas, and you see a rise of protectionist and xenophobic tendencies that happens often in America. It's happened in cycles throughout our history. And I will tell you that in the more conservative parts of my state, there's very much an anti-Chinese sentiment. And I spent a lot of time correcting my colleagues and saying, you need to say, this is a policy of the PRC communist government. This is not all Chinese people. And there is a difference between people of Chinese origin and Chinese people and the policies of a government that is in power. And you have to separate that. And that is why it is important for us to engage and teach people that you can't lump all people who are racially or ethnically Chinese in one box, because we don't all have a unified worldview. We certainly don't all represent the viewpoints of the Chinese Communist government. However, we do need to remind people that we are part of America, that we are a valuable resource, so that if we do want to engage with the government of the PRC, having Asian Americans, not even Chinese Americans, who can speak the various languages, who can make those connections, whether it is culturally, whether it is through education, whether it is through business, is actually an advantage we have in the United States. We have that advantage. We have Americans of Chinese descent who can be the ones to participate in that and elevate our engagement. Yes, there's going to be global competition. There's global competition in terms of the military. There's also global competition when it comes to economics. But let me tell you, my home state of Illinois, our top 3 products are soybean, corn, and pork. Who do you think my biggest customer is? So we have to engage economically. And it is important to maintain that economic engagement. And that is where Chinese Americans in business in particular can be very helpful in promoting that and explaining that. We just had a PRC company goal motion just build a factory in Illinois that's created like 1,000 jobs, 1,000 union jobs in Illinois. That's a good thing. We should talk about that. That's an electric battery company. That is good for moving towards a green future, a carbon-free future. We don't get to that future as a nation without the participation of the PRC and the rest of the world. And so basically, we can't do it alone. And we have the best tools already to not have to go it alone, to really support our leadership role on a global scale because of the diversity of who is American. We are American. This room is American. It's just as American as my dad's side of the family that has been in the United States for over 200 years. And that is an important message to get across.
Thank you so much, David. Do we have anything else to say to us?
Just welcome. I hope you take the time to enjoy these historic buildings. And remember, this is your house. If you're in America, this is your house as well. And as you meet with people and talk to people, make your voices heard. It is important. And sometimes you have to knock really loud on the door to make your voices heard. But that is important. That is how we move the country forward, and it's how we maintain and grow a global role as a leader of the free world. And I'm just so grateful to know that I'm not alone in this effort, that I have all of you who are also working from your perspectives as well. And really importantly, let's help me grow the next generation of leaders in this country, especially when it comes to civic engagement, because we have such passionate young people, and they're so brilliant, and they're so active, whether they go into business or into government or into politics, but we have to support them as they choose to run for office, and we have them running for office all over the country. Support those candidates, whether it's Republican or Democrat. I don't care what party. Well, okay, I do care. But I would rather the Democrats, but it's also important to engage to get Asian Americans elected on the Republican side as well, because it is about the strength of this nation, and we don't get there without Asian Americans, Native whites, and Pacific Islanders having a seat at the table, but nobody's going to give us a seat at the table. We have to take that seat and say, that's my seat, I'm going to sit here.
Thank you so much, Danny. Thank you very much, and let us definitely be once from Illinois, let's support Tammy and support her all the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to by a good friend of mine. I made sure so our next speaker is Taipei in the building. Taipei, here you are. Just brief note, Taipei and I know each other since I was a student in college studying at the University of Maryland. But it's very important that we dedicate our time to know to him that he is the president of UCA, the organization that has been very active in our community for the various years. So take it away, Taipei.
Hi, Congressman. I have a great honor to introduce to you. That story is really a typical immigrant family story. He was born in Taiwan, grew up here in this country. His father is from mainland China originally, mother is from Taiwan, and his wife from Hong Kong. Isn't that a beautiful Chinese immigrant family story? He grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Anybody from Ohio here? I see a few hands. You can talk with him later on. But what is more important is that ever since he came to U.S. Congress in, I think, 2015, what impressed me most is that just a few months into coming here, events broke out that many of you here knows as the story of Sherry Chen, a Chinese-American scientist who was wrongly accused of being spying for China. And Ted, as a freshman congressman, didn't ask, is this something too sensitive for me to do? Or is this too much about mainland China-U.S. relations? I should be more careful. The first thing he said when I went into his office is, what can we do? And in 3 days after that, we had a great event on Capitol Hill to press for the Obama government to do something to correct that wrong. And ever since, had become a fighter and a champion for Chinese American and Asian American community here on the Hill, and now he is the top leader in the Democratic caucus, and we hope he can do a lot more for us in this troubled time for our community. Thank you, Ted.
大家好，我是李云平，国会议员，谢谢请我来。Congressman Ted, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Taipei, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for inviting me here. And thank you all for participating. I just wanted to say, Chinese Fujian was one of the worst laws, the most horrible laws ever passed by the United States. One of the good things about democracy is we can recognize our mistakes and correct them. So the Chinese Fujian 80 years ago was repealed. And then in 2012, under the leadership of Jimmy Chu, the United States apologized for that law. That would not happen but for many of you and your activism. So I want all of you to understand the power that you have. As Taipei mentioned, we saw discrimination happen against Asian Americans such as Sherry Chen when the government went after her, accused her of espionage and of being a spy. They turned her life upside down, and then she fought back. And not only were charges from her withdrawn, but eventually she got a settlement in the United States of over $1 million because she was right because of the help of some of the people here. We also saw the government go after professors in academia and other professors because they happen to be Asian. And so Asian American caucus here called AAPAC in Congress. We work with civil rights groups, and we lobbied and fought back against the administration. They had, as you may have known, the China Initiative, and in our view, simply were targeting Americans and other folks in America simply because of their race. And we kept putting pressure on them. We held hearings, we did press conferences, we wrote op-eds. And this administration, to their credit, stopped the China Initiative. That's in part because of the work of all of you. So I want you to understand that your activism matters. And I just want to say a little bit about what it's like to be a member of Congress. We're in 2-year legislative cycles. Every 2 years, I vote over 1,000 times, either on the floor or in committee. And in most of those votes, I'd say 80 to 90% of those votes, I don't get a single phone call, email, meeting. So when you come up to Capitol Hill, when you go lobby your members of Congress or U.S. senators, it is very important. It causes us and our staffs to go, hey, why is this issue so important? And because we deal with so many issues here, I'm very aware of the China Exclusion Act. I know all of you are very aware. But many members of Congress are dealing with lots of issues. Ukraine, with issues in your district, with other issues in world affairs. And I guarantee you, many of them may have no idea that this is the 80th anniversary of the Chinese Exclusion Act. And many of them may have no idea that many states are now doing what I call Chinese Exclusion Act version 2.0. We're preventing the folks who have to be Asian from purchasing or selling land. The problem with those hateful laws, such as the one that Florida has passed, is that Asian Americans now will get caught up. So anyone that looks like you and me or has an Asian surname is going to be put under higher scrutiny by realtors, by the bank industry, by the entire process related to purchasing and selling land. And that is going to cause hardship to Americans who happen to be Asian. And that's why we have to fight back against these hateful laws. I'm so pleased that all of you are working that issue. And let me just conclude on some hopeful news. The last 2 U.S. Census reports show that Asian Americans are the fastest rising ethnic group in America. Asian Americans have more than doubled in size in the last 2 decades. And now there's Asian Americans not just in California and New York, but enough in presidential swing states, such as Arizona and Nevada. And that's causing both political parties to now reach out to Asian American voters, and that's a very good thing. And let me just finish out some things that you could do. Understand that lots of folks, for example, write letters to the editor, but many of them are the same folks. So if you start writing, you can start getting published, changing hearts and minds. You can do social media. It is free. If you write an interesting post, maybe it will affect someone in Florida or Ohio or Nevada. Think also about working on campaigns of any issues that you're interested in. And lastly, just get people registered. Get your family and friends registered to vote. For those of us who are elected officials, for those who are working campaigns, you know that during campaigning, if you're not registered to vote, you literally get ignored. You don't get a single phone call, a single mailer, a single contact. So simply getting lots of Asian Americans registered to vote causes elected officials to go, oh, now we have to reach out to this group of people, and that will help the community. So look forward to working with all of you as we continue to make America an even better place to live, work, and play. Have a great day.
Thank you, Congressman.
Let's take a picture together.
Sure. Where is that? Over there.
Okay.
One more.
OK， 一定，但是都没有来，没有这样子。Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to invite Ms. Marcy Wu to introduce our next guest, Ruben Hopkins. Ruben.
Hi, dear friends and guests. Our meeting now is exciting. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So, in keeping going, we will not have a break. If you necessarily has a break, you will welcome. It's my honor to introduce Ruben Hopkins. Ruben is a civil rights leader, media pioneer, and president, Chamber of Commerce organizer who owns over 5 million grants for Wisconsin Black Chamber of Commerce. He will share the historic events of Black and Chinese struggling together in the past and emphasize that any ethic group is no one will bring purpose of freedom. And CRCEA80 is a milestone of humanity and start points of true civil rights progress. Ruben has been operating his TV channel as a recurring turning startup business successful, and is on his way to create thousands of black business in the years to come. Now, welcome.
Wow, look at this room. Hello, everyone. I promise to be brief. I think that as I listen to all the wonderful people come up here today, and all the elected officials, everybody who's come up here and talk about the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, for me, I want to kind of change what I had to say, because my experience with the Chinese, I didn't. Vicky Wong and Ken Ping Toy were my childhood friends, and so I didn't get a chance to experience not having Chinese people around me growing up, because I had them around me. The Toy family also taught us a lot about cooking and eating as a child, so I was kind of in a community that kind of shielded me from some of the mean stuff that people can do when they don't understand. And then, because of this particular administration and the funding that we received in Wisconsin, I was able to work even closer with Jimmy and Glenn and the Wisconsin Chinese Chamber. And we have formed a bond that other people can only look at and wonder. We're at all of the Chinese Chamber's events, and they're at all of our events. We do an annual event together. And so the benefit of the Exclusion Act is that I get to work with and develop friends from the Chinese community. And so to me that is more important than, well, more important today for me than talking to you about what Frederick Douglass said years ago. Equity and inclusion, including people, making people feel welcome, is a very important part of what history says works, especially in this country. The freedoms that we have, the freedoms that was taken for granted, I can't tell you how important that is. So I want to thank Lyndon, I want to thank Jimmy, I want to thank you guys for working with us in Wisconsin. We've committed, we have a 3,000 Black Business Challenge that we've committed to Wisconsin to grow Black business community. And we work hand in hand with the Chinese community. We contract with many of the Chinese businesses that are in Wisconsin and the building that just bought. We're putting the lights in. And as we develop that building, we're going to continue to contract with the Chinese businesses that have services that we can use. And so, I'm not running for office. I don't have any kind of speech or anything like that, but I am proud and honored to be here today. I wish I could hug everybody, but I don't think I can. And thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. Thank you all for your experience, your experience. So with that, I just want to check it out so that we can get the program back on schedule. And I appreciate you.
又见面了。
因为我是后进。
Bear with us for 1 minute as our congresswomen face their way of the meeting.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Louis Liu from Queens, New York. It is my distinct honor to introduce the next speaker from my district, Congresswoman Grace Mong. Congresswoman Grace Mong, she is serving her 6th term in the United States House of Representatives. She represents New York 6th District, which covers the entire Queens, including West, Central, Northeast Queens in New York City. And New York 6 is one of the most diverse congressional districts in the whole country. Representative Meng, she is the first and only Asian American member of Congress from the state of New York. And she is also the first female member of Congress from Queens since former Vice President nominee Geraldine Ferraro. Representative Meng, she served on the powerful House Appropriation Committee, where she is a New York senior member, and she is the vice-ranking member as well. She also sits on both the State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee and the Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies Subcommittee. She also served as the first vice chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, AAPAC. She is also a co-chair of the House Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism and as a vice chair of the LGBT Equality Caucus. Representative Meng, she has dedicated her entire career to serving her constituents in Queens and also representing the needs and demands of all Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islander nationwide. And now for today's conference, I must mention the following. On June 13, 2022 last year, President Biden signed the commission to study the potential creation of a national museum of an Asian Pacific American History and Cultural Act, which passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate. And this law was introduced in the House by none other than my Congresswoman, Representative Meng from my district. Now, without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Congresswoman Meng.
Thank you so much, Louis. 大家好，我是美国国会议员孟昭文，欢迎大家到华盛顿。我们是山东河南人，我爸爸山东人，妈妈河南人。And my parents are actually with us here in Washington today, so it's very exciting to be able to get together with old friends and new friends as well. I'm so happy to welcome all of you to Washington, D.C. This is our nation's capital. This is your capital. And really excited to be here, especially as we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act, and to continue to talk about the ways that we will continue to work for equity for our Asian American community across the whole country. I don't have to tell you about the Chinese Exclusion Act, which was the first significant law restricting immigration to the U.S. based on ethnicity. This act suspended immigration for Chinese people for 10 years. The repeal of the act in 1943 was an important first step towards equality for Chinese Americans. And while all of us here understand the significance of this act and its repeal, it's a part of our nation's history that most people do not know about. Even when I was a kid growing up in very diverse New York City, we barely learned about this piece of history beyond a line or two in our textbooks. But as you all know, throughout our nation's history, Asian Americans have been a part of so many accomplishments, scientific discoveries to economic development to social justice movements. And these accomplishments are often missed in the greater narrative of the American story and who is an American. That includes us, Chinese Americans. And that's why I'm especially proud, and thank you for this second frame, it's really cool.
That was my bill, which honestly was from many years ago. I put that bill in I think 2014, 2015, but no one cared about it. No one was paying attention to it. And I do have to give credit to also our New York Senior Senator Chuck Schumer, because we were at one of these Stop Asian Hate rallies, and I said to Chuck, I said, hey, I've had this bill for a long time. And he said, let's do it. And you know, sometimes when politicians say, let's do it, you don't know if they really mean it. But he kept true to his word. Within 2 months, not even, the bill was passed and signed into law. I do have to thank some of my colleagues in the Black Caucus and in the Hispanic Caucus, because they were the ones that supported this bill every step of the way. They sent testimony, they testified on the floor of the House in support of this bill and this potential museum. So we are very grateful for the allyship and the partnership that we have here in Washington, D.C. and around the country. It is really important to have a museum like this, and I'm also pushing for more inclusive education in our curriculum, in our schools, because our children, not just Chinese kids, all students need to learn about this important piece of American history. Asian history, Chinese American history is also American history. So, I'm so grateful for all of you coming here today. I know that especially my New York friends, you woke up at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. to be here, and I know it's not easy, but it's really very meaningful for you to be here, and I wish you great luck today as you continue to discuss this, and we will continue to work together. Thank you so much for being here. Happy holidays.
Not too much.
You write a good Chinese.
It's very limited.
Very much, Grace. Thank you, Grace.
You are the best.
Thank you so much, Tony. Great job. And can we all give a round of applause to Dr. John for his visionary leadership to bring all of us together? This is such a beautiful sight. I can't help myself.
I'd like to invite Mr. Henry to introduce our next speaker, Congressman Rokana from California.
We located in California, and I'm proud to introduce you our Congressman, Mr. Rokana. Mr. O'Connor represents the California 17th District and became the heart of Silicon Valley. And he's serving his fourth term. He serves on the House Armed Service Committee as ranking member of the subcommittee of Cyber Innovation, Technology, and Information System. Co-chair of Congressional Caucus on India and Indian Americans. Member of the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. and on the Oversight and Accountability Committee, where he previously chaired the Environmental Subcommittee. Mr. Conner, thank you for inviting us to your office in the summer. Your continued support of mental health and Asian hate crime prevention is greatly appreciated. And thank you so much for being with us today. Now let's put our hands together and give our warmest welcome to Congressman.
Thank you so much. Busy lives, busy schedules, and mark this important occasion of the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act. I see you have one of the posters of Frederick Douglass's Composite Nation. It's one of my favorite speeches. And Douglass, after being enslaved for 15 years, becomes free, and the first thing he does, one of his first major speeches, is to speak about America being a multiracial democracy and saying that we should not be excluding Chinese immigration. The Chinese immigration would add to the country. Of course, we did not take his advice, and in this country we passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which unfortunately has led to a history of the exclusion of Asian Americans. We saw that in the internment of Japanese Americans. We saw that in the Communist case, where Indian Americans were not allowed to have citizenship. We saw that in the exclusion of immigration that was not fixed until the 1965 Immigration Act, and we saw it after 9/11 with the profiling of South Asians. We saw it most recently with COVID, with the Chinese Americans being blamed for COVID, and we see it today with the Muslim Americans and Islamophobia and folks, people in anti-Semitism still with us in the United States. That is why it is so important for all of you to be here, to remind us that our work is not done in becoming a more perfect democracy. I will just say that my district is an incredible example of the Asian American community, Latino community, African American community, all working with the Caucasian community together to build the future that we want for our democracy. I represent the only Asian majority district in the continental United States. I'm very proud of it. And I don't think it is a coincidence that we have been a district that welcomes people from all over the world, and also happens to be the district that has produced the world's most wealth in human history. $10 trillion, Apple, Google, Intel, Yahoo, Cisco, LinkedIn, Tesla, all in my district. And that is because we recognize that people from all different parts of the world, when they come to America, can contribute, that they are innovative, that they can help lead our country forward. So I just want to salute you for being here, for recognizing the work we need to continue to do to stand up for immigration and equal rights for all. And I hope that the next generation will vindicate Douglass's vision of really making it a composite nation with people of all backgrounds. Thank you for having me. Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. Thank
Make a announcement. After the meeting is closed, we will go to the technical field to take a photograph. You know what is that? And we will take a picture first and then come back to have a lunch. Everybody can go out in the door toward the car and get a lunch, and you can be everywhere at the lunch. So have any question, just ask the front desk outside the door.
Yes, I believe the organizers have these prepaid cards that you guys can get, and it will work in any of the congressional cafeterias. So, without further delay, I'd like to invite our next. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Janelle Wong, and I'm a professor of Asian American Studies at the University of Maryland. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Madeline Hsu. Madeline Hsu is professor of history at the University of Maryland, College Park, and she serves as the director of the Center for Global Migration. At the University of Texas at Austin, where she recently moved from, she serves as the director of Asian American Studies from 2006 to 2014. She is the author of several books, Dreaming of Gold, Dreaming of Home, Transnationalism and Migration Between the United States and South China, 1882 to 1943, and The Good Immigrants, How the Yellow Peril Became the Model Minority. She is also the author of Asian American History, a very short introduction. She received her undergraduate degrees in history from Pomona College and her PhD from Yale University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Madeline Hsu to the stage.
Committee on Social Progress， 欢迎请我来有这个机会可以跟你演讲。我是历史学家，所以我很高兴有这个机会跟你谈这个美国历史的一个非常重要的一部分。我中文名字是徐元英，我是出生在美国，可是小的时候住了台湾跟香港。I'm going to switch back to English now, but I do really want to thank the organizers of this event, and I'm so glad that so many of you have turned out to learn about this really important part of our national history. Can you move to the next slide? So this is just the self-promotion page, but I want to draw your attention to at the top there, Teach Immigration History. This is a free website platform. It lists key events in U.S. immigration history. It also includes different modules that give you an overview of key aspects in U.S. immigration history. populations. And so this is a resource that is available for those of you who want to learn more. I'm going to move very fast through this talk, and I hope it helps you think about some major issues. If you can move to the next slide. So I want to foreground a couple of key ideas for you to reflect on. We are a country that is sorely in need of reforms of immigration policy. Chinese immigrants, Chinese Americans are at the heart of these debates and understanding how the United States as a nation has managed its immigration policy. And immigration policy is extremely fraught. There is a lot of just identify them in laws by race. And so the Chinese exclusion laws will specify Chinese by race, and there will be these very ugly kinds of images circulated. It was a bipartisan issue. Chinese were represented as being a form of holy labor akin to slavery that had just been abolished in the United States at such, at very high cost. Also portrayed here as a form of overwhelming the United States. And if you look at that graphic, this depiction of invasion really captures this contradiction. So on the one hand, you actually have Chinese workers, Chinese business people who are instrumental in developing the west coast of the United States. In fact, they're highly contributing and productive, and yet this is seen as a kind of attack and a kind of undermining, right? And so it's, even though Chinese Americans are such a small percentage of the national population, throughout history, nonetheless, they have been canaries in the coal mine. They have really sort of signaled the major changes in terms of U.S. attitudes towards trying to regulate immigration, but then as we see with repeal, the efforts to liberalize those immigration policies, and then also to make them serve more rational ends than racial discrimination and segregation. Move to the next slide. So here is the sort of the main terms of the Chinese exclusion law, which when it was passed was actually worded very sort of neutrally as an act to uphold these treaty terms. And so the U.S. At this time actually wasn't certain about what kinds of authority it would have to enact immigration restriction targeting a specified population. There were some concerns that it would be offensive to the Chinese government, and so the U.S. government first undertook to negotiate a treaty with China claiming authority to limit but not absolutely suspend immigration by Chinese, okay? And so what the law does is it simply carries out the terms of the treaty agreement. But what happened in practice is that the U.S. government decided to enforce those laws as severely as possible, leading to the effort to accomplish Chinese exclusion, whereas the Chinese government had not expected this kind of sort of extreme implementation. And the Chinese government will make many efforts to negotiate on behalf of Chinese persons, but these will be set aside by the United States. Chinese in the United States will also make many attempts to push back against the expansion of federal authority regarding the extreme powers of the U.S. federal government to restrict, to enforce immigration laws. And we should know, we have all of these elected officials here encouraging you to participate in U.S. government, to understand its processes, which all of you are doing by coming today. Chinese understood the terms of the 14th Amendment. They understood to hire lawyers. They understood to try to challenge laws that were singling them out in courts all the way up to the level of the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, with regards to immigration, Chinese will consistently lose those cases. And so we must pay attention to Chinese American history, because Chinese Americans and the exclusion laws against them and the expansion of U.S. immigration bureaucracy that resulted after, as the United States government decided it really wants to limit and restrict immigration. The foundations of all of these powers, for example, the authority to detain, also to deport, the requirement that people bear documents of their law was carved out with regard to China, right? And Chinese tried to fight this sort of targeting of them, but what the Supreme Court will rule is that when it comes to cases of potential immigrants, of people who are of alien status, the United States government has virtually unconfined authority, okay? And so this is why we need to pay attention to Chinese American history. Okay, if we can move to the next slide. Now I'm going to move very quickly. Also should be considered alongside factors of belief in racial difference and hierarchy and inassimilability in your immigration laws. This was strategically, move to the next slide, critical during World War II because the Japanese government was actively campaigning. Oh, this is the slide about Madame Chiang Kai-shek. We also have examples of Chinese Americans who demonstrate just that if we look at Chinese as individuals, as human beings, there are some who are superlatively would be superlatively welcome to become U.S. citizens. So Madame Chiang Kai-shek really embodied this. She was perhaps the most famous Chinese person that people in the United States we know about. She was U.S. educated, came from a Methodist family, was married to the leader of China, Chiang Kai-shek, who had converted to Christianity. And she illustrated for many Americans this belief that Chinese people could be made more like Americans in their religion, but then also in their political practice. Madame Chiang Kai-shek openly, told Congress, told the United States, what China wants is China is trying to forge its way to become a modern nation, is to be a democracy like the United States. And this all works very powerfully in terms of overcoming these beliefs focused on racial difference. Okay. And that's her speaker. She went on a speaking tour in 1943. She spoke at the Hollywood Bowl, which had been, during World War II, people had not really been going, but for Madame Chiang Kai-shek, about 20,000 people turned out. It was a big crowd. She also spoke at Madison Square Garden. Okay, so some of the conditions for the repeal of exclusion. The wartime alliance. We should not underestimate the importance of political factors. Japan was openly campaigning in China for Chinese to reject the United States as an ally. How could the United States and China truly be friends and be collaborating when Chinese are the only group targeted by race for almost complete exclusion of the United States? Instead, Japan argued China should agree to a racial alliance with Japan under the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. This was also going to be a problem, right? And the Chinese did not take it up. But there was this kind of urgency. We also have the reality of sort of recognition that in China, so my second book, The Good Immigrants, focuses on Chinese international students and the major influence they have had on the development of international education programs in the United States. And so we have this contradiction that even as exclusion was going on, we also had Chinese all the way back to the 19teens were always among the most numerous of international students in the United States. We have people like Hu Shi, for example, Zhao Yuanren, were here in the United States, but because of the U.S. immigration laws, these kinds of people didn't have options to stay here. And this is even more emphasized in World War II. There's a lot of sympathy for this group called the stranded students. They include people like Yang Zhenli and Zhao Yuanren, Zhou Dao, also Tian Xuesen, people of sort of the highest caliber. This is also at a time period when economic competitiveness is tied more and more to technological and scientific innovation, right? If you have brilliant people, if they are trained, it is really to your advantage to try to keep them in the United States, but you have these racist immigration talent, but then also there's sympathy for him, and during the Chinese, after the Japanese invasion of China in 1947, during World War II, during the Chinese Civil War, there's also brought us back to China, that's in disarray. But then after 1949, there is really this competition against the communist world to try to hold on to the
session. As much I'd like to invite Mr. Jack Xie.
各位嘉宾、各位朋友、各位来自各个州的社区领袖，今天来到华盛顿 DC。今天。也许是我只有我一个讲中文的中国人，美国人。我是美国华人华侨联合会谢锋，美华总会作为全美华人发展大纲的出品方，也是本次大会的主办方之一。在这庄严的国会殿堂，和各位嘉宾和朋友一起见证第一档全美华人发展大纲成功面世。在这振奋人心的时刻，我要感谢台前幕后大家为所有大纲主力的朋友、编委们表示感谢。大纲的核心思想是整合资源、合作共赢、维护权益、提高华人的社会地位。大纲的主要的主题是以正确的方向引领我们邻居的未来，其核心围绕了几个层面：根脉的传承、身份的认同、融入奉献、开创未来4个主题，全面展现在美华人奋斗的历史。我们编撰华人发展大纲的内容，是集华人前辈的智慧与思考，及华人经验与教训，及观察所一起努力的朋友们，这是非常有意义的传承，既是现实意义的，又有长远的价值。我们编撰的初衷使命就在于此：第一，融合了所有赞美华人精华，载入史册的经典文章，因为每篇文章都在我们华人精彩的记录我们的历史。作者们在历史的反思和生活的经历的分享，以及对未来的期望。第二，通过阅读赞美华人最精彩的故事、奋斗的历史，激励大家在危机中充满机会，在生存中谋取发展。我们可以总结以下几点：在个人和家庭层面，华裔的奋斗精神要强调身份认同，同时要保持对中华文化的尊重与传承，用发展的眼光、大局观，积极的融入美国社会。在族裔的层面，我们华人不仅要维护华裔的权益，也要积极的参与和少数民族的族裔互助团结，在与各民族、少数族裔一起合作，共建和谐的美国社会。在国家层面，我们有义务 我们有责任履行我们公民的义务，为美国发展做贡献，让不同背景的华人凝聚在一起，实现我们共同的美国梦。在这历史时刻，我们发行了撰写全美华人发展档案90篇的文章，凝聚着我们前辈们走过的历史的总结，让华人档案的精髓帮助我们总结经验，茁壮成长。最后，我要感谢在座的来自全美各州的嘉宾和朋友们参与今天的盛会，感谢你们的到来。我要感谢我们7个主办方的合作伙伴的组织者，他们在背后付出了非常多的心血努力。尤其我特别感谢我们美华总会华盛顿地区分会的核心成员陈学礼会长、吴小山理事长、温迪秘书长的努力和奉献，以及台前幕后所有的我们参与的组织者，在背后默默的奋斗了2个月，才有今天的盛会的举行。对我们的义工们，以及我们美华总会各个州的，来自路易斯安那，来自那个费城的，来自纽约的，来自加州的，所有的美华总会的各州都积极参与我们这次的盛会。对此，我们表示衷心的感谢，最诚挚的问候，谢谢大家。
Thank you, Jack. We're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. I know you guys are probably thinking about lunch. It's been a long morning. So, to wrap up, we will have Mr. Charlie Booth to do some thank yous, acknowledgements of our guests, and then we move forward to our closing remarks.
Hello. Thank you, everyone. How do you like the conference today? We enjoy it. Thank you. This conference is not. It's for everyone. It's for us. We are the owner of the American. We are American citizens. So, my name is Charlie Liu. I'm the chairman of IAPAC, one of the 7 co-hosts. On behalf of the organization committee, I want to express our deeply gratitude to each and every one of you. We have a gift bag. What's inside? We have the event book. Each and every one of your name are here. You can find your name in the book. We have a badge for each and every one of you. You will bring back the proud. We are here, we fight for higher cause, higher than ourselves. We sacrifice multiple days. We fly from California, 60 people, for 3 days. That's a big commitment. We fight for our rights of the old Americans, old Chinese Americans. When Chinese American is better, old American is better. That's why we are here. We also want to thank all the organizations, collaboration organizations. We have your logos here. We can meet some of you, but that's you. We have created a postmark. It will be registered in the National Post Museum forever. We have 81 logos. Each and every one we are here. We are together for this conference. Last but not least, I want to recognize some of the biggest contributors for this event. First, I would like to invite all the one representative for each of the 7 co-hosts. Please come on stage. We have Steve Hill, come on stage, Jack Xie, Jisoo, Haipei, Chun Gui, Wells. 7 co-hosts are then come on stage. Jack Xie, Haipei, Yilin, come in. They are the biggest owner of this event. In addition to 6 initiators, I will call their name to come on stage. Xiaoyan, Huang Qian, He Ting, Louis, Zhu Liyan, who is the initiator? Wenbin, yeah, okay. Those guys put most effort, most sacrifice. When 2 days, 3 days ago, when we heard our venue, the most secure place in the U.S. Capitol, get canceled, I can see white hair pop up from Xiaoyan's head, from Steve's head. They take huge pressure. I can imagine they sleep 0 minutes in those 3 nights. However, with collective effort, we find this new place. We pull this off. As successful, if not better than before. This is a collective effort. We should be proud of ourselves all year. Next, I would like to invite our biggest sponsors. Representatives， 陈善庄、引爆，有需要劳工啊，张晨、冉阳、杨冉，对 ，and SBU come on stage. Who is come on stage and APAC, who is from APAC today? Who is from APAC today?
2位，我们都往后，这都
Okay,
都看。
all of the heroes, they put the most effort of all of us. We are together here, not representing ourselves. We represent the whole Chinese community. We will take the picture in the U.S. Capitol. We will pass the message. We are united. Today is the beginning of a bigger collaboration. For tomorrow, we're going to do bigger things. We'll be more powerful, just like other people. Thank you.
跟大家讲，非常感谢大家能够今天在inside doing however we're going to take a picture. So it's very important that everybody knows. So we're going up to the Capitol Hill. And someone who's going to go picture and we're going to organize that. So that once you walk on the floor, you will get lunch bar. And then we walk up to the Capitol. 不想讲就出来了。我们所有的人出门的时候，
后一点可以吗？你就把我们全部整成
卡片。这个卡片可以在我们这个国会山里任何一个地方可以吃饭，可以。但是之前我们要先去一起照个相。
我们先提醒一下大家，这是APAC会是由8分钟，请大家说的时候一定要。
好了，大家先别走哈。 等一下，我们这里会谈结束完以后，我们移步到国会山庄前面拍个大合影。所有今天参加的，还有义工都可以到那边拍个合影，好不好？我们现在接下来，先发那个参券的卡片，然后我们到那边拍照片。拍完以后，我们自由行动。 1个钟头多，然后我们再有下午的活动，好不好？谢谢。
把新闻结束，再谢谢大家。今天一起传播大家出版的时候，谢谢大家，谢谢。
好。
引导。
怎么样？
他们叫你了，过去了。我们要照相。我们要照相。
在这儿
过来了。
我跟黄健照个相。好。
哈哈哈。
我还家有这不条。
排华法案80周年。虽然说我不是说很了解，但是通过今天的这个纪念活动，我们是更深的印象来了解到这个法案当时是怎样的一个背景，也非常高兴今天能在这里见到伟伟，能够通过他的这个平台，让更多的人知道我们今天的这个纪念活动是非常有意义的，对我们华人。不要点这张照片，然后我们现在拿给你。
啊，那个五星标那个政党的那个这个那个，我叫下去了。啊，来。哎，哥弟，给我们调两位，我叫一下。来，给你照一个。
你帮我们选一个。
啊。各个都主席了，各个都主席。多好，你看看。
对，我的夫人又跑到哪里？
哎，你夫人老是脱单了。
对，我夫人。
哎，你看看找不到你看，这着急死了，你看到没有？快点！
我夫人的，习主席。啊，等一下，我给。好，谢谢老师，谢谢你们辛苦了。
你看看。对呀，你看看。我是动态。啊，动态。
来。
你看看。
对啊，照一个人，不要站旁边，不要站了，站上就不自然了。讲话是一个差不多。好了，在这排队啊，看到上面还有看上面。
你辛苦了，5点过。对。 哎呀，来，你看，对，人潮，捕捉镜头啊！对呀，捕捉那么多镜头，你看到没有？苏老师，李胜利，对，胜利，对，你看看，哇，个个都是主席啊，个个都是主席，多厉害啊！
我不知道你这个怎么用，
你看，谢谢。
哇！
好，你看一下我，兄弟，看一下我。
先是一个录像。
来，两个回头。
来录像。好。你是不是把 Anna 名字也填上去了？
哈哈哈。
好。
来，OK，可以，哦哟，对。哦 ，wonderful， professional。
对，我是视频，你拍吧，没事。对，视频是活的。
梁总把这借给他，
对，
不是别人想起来。好，小帅哥来。
小帅哥，对，好。
好，谢谢。
啊。
应该有个历史照记一下。
哎，老弟过去给你拍录像，快点，给你录像，签字，录像，对，去，我录像，你拍照，懂吗？我们是良家子弟啊。
没有了。
对呀，我们是良家子弟啊，要留下，是不是啊？对，很好，太棒了。对了，对，好。你看看，
你拿一个，我拿给你拍。
我已经拍了，谢谢，已经拍了。
大家都到国会山去。
哎，最辛苦是你了啊！对呀。
2017年在开会的时候，对呀，
大家都去国会山啊，
国会山庄。好。
好 ，OK。
哇。
The other side is many do.
2年了，我没看见。
等一下，我们照3相。
好。集合。
你们先走。
自己。现在走出国会山。
我们去那个国会大厦。
对啊。走了。好，我们这个。
哦，这样方便。
自录嘛，对不对？来，老乡来啊，来这里。来，老乡。啊，对了。
好，感谢梁家。
我们广西。
哎，走，
刘三姐。
领导，
刘哥。
领导，我们一起走啊！
你看多好。
他这个皮带一直我拿着。吓死，这小子皮带忘了。
谢谢。
啊。
美女，来，我们广西美女，你看，活龙活现的在国会山庄。是不是？不要靠别人，靠自己的了。
非常有意义。
是不是？你看，难得。对呀，历史性啊！
哎，
我要跟老人家，你看看，99是吧？我哎呦，很好。哎呀，我是纽约梁教授啊。对，上那个 YouTube 天民访谈，天民访谈啊，看到你妈妈的形象了，老人家形象，好。哎呀，99了。走出国会山庄，是不是？多好啊！还有人跟苏东河先生，你看到没有？活动活现，我们今年3进国会，对呀，啊。
哎，你怎么讲？本身去那个。